Beep, 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 beep. How you doing? Today I plumped for tea as opposed to coffee. The change is as good as a rest. It's like me going on holiday. I moved from one couch to the other. How you all doing out there in Twitter and interweb land? Here, copy, but follow, subscribe so you can get notifications. If you can join my Substack, become a member on YouTube. There's all sorts of ways you can support me. Buy me a coffee. Please do if you can to help keep things going. Oil the wheels, as they say. And today I've got for you an article in The Guardian, which is from the 5th, Thursday, the 5th of June, written by Susanna Rustin. This is a stonking article, great stuff. But I've had to read once through, but let's go through it again and see what we've got in what is asking a very interesting question. Why is there such a generational divide in views on sex and gender in Britain? It's a question that needs answering, I feel. So, why? Well, Susanna says, a majority of my age group agreed with a recent Supreme Court ruling. Among 18 to 24-year-olds, the reverse was true. I believe the key lies in our respective life stages. Interesting. Differing attitudes to women's and transgender rights activism are often said to be generational. One poll published a month on from the Supreme Court ruling that the legal definition of woman in the Equality Act is based on biological sex found 63% supportive of the ruling and 18% opposed, 18% nutters. 18% nutters who can't tell a man from a woman. But younger people were far more likely to be in the latter camp, with 53% of 18 to 24-year-olds disagreeing with the judgment. In my age group, 50 to 64, I'm with you, the figure was just 13%. So only 13% of 50 to 64-year-olds are idiots. You've got 18%, no, hang on a minute, support the word. 53% disagree. So 53% of 18 to 24-year-olds are clinically insane, but only 13% of 50 to 64-year-olds are clinically insane. As with any attempt to link a demographic with a point of view, there are plenty of exceptions. That's always true, Susanna, when one takes the sort of group identitarian route. There's always the exceptions, and this is a great one from Susanna here. Last month, Lady Hale, I'd like to rain on her parade, the octogenarian former president of the Supreme Court, became one of them when she argued that the ruling had been misinterpreted, telling a literary festival she had met doctors who said there's no such thing as biological sex. Well, she octogenarian, you're getting there then, aren't you? So I'm going to assume she's not, completely deranged. I'm going to assume she's just a bit addled. Want a cake, love? There comes a point when my respect for someone like Lady Hale, who has got an extraordinary career behind her and the most extraordinary knowledge of what's going on, when she starts saying there's no such thing as biological sex, it's really time to go, can I get you a cake? You want a cup? Do you want tea? Sugar? Sit there quietly, love. She's obviously out of the game. The progressive explanation for the age gap is in the name, progress. As the arc of history bends towards justice, younger people are ahead of the curve. Social scientists call this a cohort effect, which basically means when you are born is one of the influences, along with income, education, and so on your politics. In relation to transgender rights, the reasoning is that people born since the 1980s are more relaxed about sex and sexuality and more committed to personal freedoms, including the right to define one's own identity. The obvious catch to this analysis at the moment is the way some young men have swung towards the hard right. That is absolute drivel. Wait, just wait. As the arc of history bends towards justice, does it? Does that tell that to the Chinese before the Cultural Revolution? Does it? It is fairly obvious in this country. I'm not sure, Susanna, whether you're saying this is what's going on or you're just describing it. I'm not sure from the article. The arc of history bends towards justice, right? Younger people are ahead of the curve. They're not ahead of the curve. They're not ahead of the curve, and this is not. You see, this is what I think is happening. And Susanna, please do put me right if I'm misreading your article. But this is not some grassroots movement, transgender rights. Okay, it is a top-down imposition by a bunch of lunatic lefties and liberals, that's right, which has been grasped upon by the rapacious nature of corporates and monetized so that they can commodify the human body. So I don't get what you're talking about here. I'm really sorry, but I don't. People born since the 90s are more relaxed about sex and sexuality. What on earth does cutting off your genitals have to do with sex and sexuality? Tell me I'm getting this wrong, people. Yes, young men aren't swinging towards the hard right, Susanna. They're not swinging towards the hard right. The hard right. I don't even know what the hard right is. What's the hard right, Susanna? Bearing in mind that Nazis were socialists. What's the hard right? Sorry, but I just don't understand that bit. In relation to transgender rights, there's no such thing, right? There's no such thing as transgender. There's no such thing as gender identity. And they certainly shouldn't have any rights. What are you talking about? They get the same rights as the rest of us. If I read this wrong, tell me I've read this wrong. If a cohort effect applies when it comes to gender, and assuming that future cohorts are in agreement, gender identity advocates can look forward to winning this argument eventually. Right. In other words, so what you're saying is that, like the gay movement, this will be incremental. So we're going to remove the genitals of people based on a belief system incrementally until they win the argument. I've got to have this wrong. Surely I've got this wrong. Older conservative voters and politicians and judges and journalists such as me, who don't think someone's trans identity should take precedence over their biological sex when society decides which sport teams or prison they belong in, are just causing a delay. Now, right, okay, I think I'm beginning to get it. I've got you wrong, Susanna, causing a delay. This was the view endorsed by David Lammy. Oh, David Lammy, that hippopotamus of a man, in 2021, when he said there were dinosaurs in our own party who want to hoard rights. The extinction of such people would, he implied, sort things out in the end. Right, I'm seeing it now. So we are saying that in essence, there is an element that they think it's just a matter of time before the sterilization, mutilation, psychosocial interventions, before the neuroeugenics of the entire EDIDI edifice becomes the norm. That's what I think you're saying here. Along with other middle-aged gender-critical women, I've got used to dismissal such as Lammy, but did you don a dinosaur suit, Susanna? Were you wandering around town in the suit of a stegosaurus? One of us, Victoria Smith, wrote a book about such attitudes and called it Hags. But terminology aside, great. But terminology aside, I think those who characterise their struggle as being between young progressives and ageing reactionaries are mistaken. Right. There we go. Right, okay. I'm with you on that. I'm not with you on the next bit. While I fully support transgender people's rights to be protected from discrimination, what's a transgender person, Susanna? What is it? Who are you talking about? The deeply disturbed young kids that get involved in this, or the cross-dressing men? Who the hell are you talking about? Transgender peoples. I don't regard the erosion of sex-based entitlements, including single-sex sports and spaces, in favour of an ethos of inclusion, as either liberal or left-wing. What? It's profoundly left-wing. It's driven by equity. Have I lost the plot? Has common sense left the building, or is this just a simple example of fishhook theory with people on the left going, "Yeah, nothing to do with me, Gov." Despite the fact it's in every leftist institution, it comes from the hallowed halls of academia, has been permeated through society by HR, which is just insanely driven by left-thinking and liberal women, because 91% of them are. So, and the other 8% are puffs like me, right? On the contrary, I think valuing inclusion over bodily privacy in changing rooms or fairness in sports is sexist. Yes, since women are more disadvantaged by these changes than men. And while gender identity campaigners claim autonomy and choice as progressive, even socialist values, I see their emphasis on the individual's right to self-definitions as congruent with consumer capitalism. Of course you do. I don't know what it is. Is it me? This just feels like it hasn't quite squared the circle. So, in other words, what I said earlier on, lunatic leftists, mad liberals, pissed off academic Trotskyists, those that want their own little places of power, sickly, controlling, toxic parental types, all hidden in the public sector, all that sort of place, do what they're doing, which is a top-down imposition of insanity of EDI and DEI across the board, which particularly influences young people because they don't know any better. And then along comes the corporations. It's not about capitalism. It's about corporations. Along comes the corporates, the multinational corporates, which you mentioned here, which is not capitalism, by the way. Right? Multinational corporations are so big that they often don't fail, and they're living on government contracts most of the time. So they're just as left as the bloody unions are. So corporations come along and go, oh, we can make money out of this by commodifying the human body. You're right. But what I think you're not doing here, which we need to do, is you're not connecting it to the fact that this is the coming together of a big state with corporations. And that, Susanna, is fascism. So multinational corporations, including banks and retailers, embrace Stonewall's workplace equality index and fly protest flag from the buildings. Although, did you see that picture of Waterstones from last year and this year? Not a rainbow in sight. Because they shift away from class politics of redistribution towards the identity politics of personal expression suits them. Right, okay, so interesting. Now, of course, this is what's happened, because I've said it before, and everybody else has been screaming about it. Can we have some class analysis, please, here? Can we? In 2023, the 40th British Social Attitude Survey described the widening age gap in politics as a puzzle, with changing party loyalties only partly mirrored in answer to questions seeking to place people on a left-right spectrum or a liberal authoritarian one. You're onto something there, but I wouldn't say liberal authoritarian. I'd say freedom. I don't think it's political. I think it's cultural. To anyone looking for answers to the question of why such age differences exist, in relation to the Supreme Court or other issues, I would suggest that as well as cohorts Gen X versus Z and so on, they should consider the life cycle. Clearly, some things matter more to people as they get older, pensions being an obvious example. What if biological sex is another? Right, okay, I'm going to stay with you. Right, this rings true with aspects of my own experience. For example, it wasn't until I had children that I learned about birth injuries, came face to face with pregnancy and maternity discrimination, or understood the gender pay gap is also a motherhood penalty. But we've known that ever since we failed to deal with motherhood, didn't we? The idea of it and how we deal with it is, we still haven't got it right. It's not that I hadn't been aware of my female body before this, but one of the things about having babies is the way that biological and social become so enmeshed. Most recently, I've become fascinated by female evolutionary thinkers, such as Sarah Hardy, is that meant to be Hardy there, Susanna? It says HRDY, whose life's work has been to explore this tangle. Now, at 53, that is menopause and aging. Most weeks, my yoga teacher has something to say about the importance for women of strength-building exercises to ward off osteoporosis, of keeping our female bones firmly in hip sockets and using muscles to hold our reproductive organs in place. This is all vital stuff about women's health, which comes across as quite ironic when you think there's such a thing as transgender rights, which we know at the end of it is pure medical damage, including, by the way, osteoporosis. That male and female bodies go wrong in different ways is nothing new. The most common cancer for women is breast cancer, while in England, prostate cancer is the most frequently for men. What has only recently become better known, thanks to advances in medical research and campaigners such as Carolina Criado Perez, is that even when we get the same diseases, there are differences, with examples including heart disease, Parkinson's, and dementia. All of this is true, right? And all of this is true and needs addressing. As with reproduction, later life, physiological divergences, have social and economic consequences. Social care is a feminist issue due to women's greater longevity. As well as the sector's predominantly female workforce, most of the poorest pensioners are single women, as many wives outlive their husbands, but also because of lower average lifetime earnings linked to women taking breaks from employment to care for children. Right? Okay, yep. Got no problem with any of that. I wonder whether the men would give up a bit of their money to live longer. What about men? Like women, the older they are, the less likely they are to tell pollsters that gender identity should replace biological sex as a legal and social category. This makes sense to me, since my argument is that consciousness of sexual difference accumulates across the life course. The fact that men are far less likely to be actively involved in campaigning on these issues than gender-critical women, even when they agree with us, is also too easy to understand. Now, as in the past, men need legal protection against sex-based discrimination, abuse, or injustice much less often than women. I don't presume to predict that today's gender identity activists will one day change their minds, but it has never seemed clearer to me that it does now, that women and men have some different needs and experiences that the law must recognise. Far from an old fogey's statute, I think the 15-year-old Equality Act, with its staunch protection of sex-based rights, is full of life. Okay. The Equality Act caused this, Susanna. Right? It's the Equality Act and the Public Sector Equality Duty that enabled the likes of Stonewall and other quack organisations. Is it quack? Shyster. I don't know. Con men, right? organisation to do what they've done over the last 15 years is the Equality Act. The Equality Act is the reason we can't fire idiots who dress like women. The Equality Act is the reason why we now find ourselves in a situation where the left are using quotas and every other single shocking example of DEI and EDI that exists. I can't, honest to God, it's a great article. It's great. It's well written. It's well worth consideration. Thanks, Susanna, for this, because it's plenty to get me teeth into, and I always love getting me teeth into a bit of this. But it does, to me, it comes across as a kind of yeah, not us, gov. When in fact, the left, the liberals, the right are all absolutely culpable for this cultural mess we're in, and the roots of it start way back. But the Equality Act is certainly not full of life. It is a grotesque slicing of us into different groups with an identitarian mindset. I don't think that young people are necessarily progressive because they understand what's happening. I think they are where they are because they've been taught it by people from our generation, by lunatics in universities, by lunatics in schools. They went into the education establishments, they took over the teacher training colleges, and they pushed this mad neoliberal hard left nonsense. That's what I think your problem is. And if you don't think that's a bigger problem than a few men that are going towards the hard right, I don't even know what that means, then I don't know what to tell you. All right? But still, brilliant article, great stuff, as always, a revealing, plenty for us to discuss. Thank you so much, Susanna. Thank you. I'll see you all later, all right? Bye-bye.